Like you mentioned about understanding, and you mentioned about approaching a person when the patterns are erupting. That I wonder why this person is like this. While people are trying to understand each other, accept each other, there are certain circumstances, there are certain things that come up when people have to take a decision to end that relationship. And that particular, the entire thought process that goes inside of it, that should I not? And when people are measuring the pros and cons. So, when do you think the end of a relationship is actually beneficial for the people involved?
Mhm. Definitely. Again, this is also something which sometimes come up in the sessions with my clients. So again, there is no absolute answer to it, but maybe a very subjective perspective I would like to give, that so relationship had good times and bad times both. So sometimes we might have a very good relationship where 90% of the time we have good times and 10% of the time we have fights, conflicts, arguments, and the painful emotions associated. So again, that is a very good and healthy relationship. There might be some relationship where 70 to 90%, again I'm using numbers but it's very subjective. So 70 to 90% we might have good times, then maybe 10 to 30% bad times. That's a good enough relationship, not too bad. But then there can be some relationship where 50 to 70% are good times, 30 to 50% are bad times. So it's a survivable relationship, that okay, I can survive this. It's not too harmful. But then there might comes a point where maybe more than 50% of the times are bad times. Then I think the question of whether to end it or not should arise. Again, not saying कि जैसे ये लगे तो end कर दो, but maybe things can be improved. But again, over a period of time, maybe over a period of few months, if you're seeing that percentage of negative times is much more, and both the partners should openly talk about it, that yes, we are not really having a good time together. Most of the time we are in a bad mood, or so obviously we human beings enter into a relationship for happiness, but if it is leading to bad times most of the time, then I think people should question it. And it happens that sometimes fundamentally personalities are incompatible, and it's okay to end the relationship, no harm. And again, I acknowledge that I use these numbers which are very subjective, and even the process of ending doesn't happen like, it's not a point, it's a process, it's a phase. You contemplate, you try to work on it, then you sometimes you work on it, and over time it works wonderfully well. You again get into the zone where good times are more. Then together the two people have worked on the relationship and made it better. But if you're trying and failing again and again, and even some people take couples therapy or marriage counseling or relationship counseling, and they take like help of a third person, a professional, to improve their relationship. Even that works sometimes. But if you've tried everything and nothing is working, then contemplating on ending the relationship, there is no harm.
People, like, when that happens, they also have thoughts like this, that I have been in such a long term relationship, how can I let go of it? Sometimes
Hmm.
these thoughts also erupt. And I guess if that's the only reason you're holding on to it, then I don't think you should go ahead with it. But again, yeah, you're right, it's very subjective, it's very different. The process itself looks very different for each relationship, for every
Hmm.
individual.
Hmm. And I think this is a very important point that you mentioned, that it has been so long. For example, people after, for example, 8 year of relationship, and then they think "Okay, maybe we should end it," which feels very uncomfortable. So another very important aspect in this context is familiarity is something which people are very afraid of, the unknown. That what if this relationship and what life holds next. Will I ever find someone? What would happen? And so many questions comes. And so one is romantic relationship, another is marriage. So especially in India, sometimes marriages are really bad. To an extent, there might be domestic abuse, and so even people stay in those kind of relationship just because they are afraid of the unknown, and they are that even though they know that the relationship is really bad, but they feel at least it's familiar, it is predictable, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate. But a lot of time people stay in really bad relationships and marriages just for the sake of familiarity and the fear of unknown.
Wow. That's beautiful to actually talk about it. And people, I
Mhm.
think, should have more discussions about these things so that
Mhm.
people who are feeling it within and not able to talk it out, not able to express them, they'll feel that I'm not alone. There are people who are
Mhm.
going through the same things, who feel the same doubts within their heads, and some are able to move past through it. Some are still contemplating. So these
Mhm.
conversations help bring that out, and they give you a new and fresh perspective about your
Yes.
situation in life as well.
True. And I think again a lot of people feel कि ये बस मेरी लाइफ में ये हो रहा है, but when we realize that
Yeah.
almost all relation, because what we show outside, we don't show the ugly sides of the relationship. We only show the good. For example, posting pictures on Instagram, we won't be posting pictures when we are fighting. So
Yeah,
we
exactly.
feel isolated कि हमारी लाइफ में ये हो रहा है. So conflicts are like fundamental part of any relationship. Like we discussed earlier, that there are two individual eyes. They can have different needs, and it will create resistance and conflict. So conflicts are natural. But what do we do with those conflicts? Do we enhance our understanding of each other or and of our own selves, and then we improve, or do we just continue with those patterns? So that's a question.